Welcome back to the United Pubcast for your latest instalment in I have no idea what, because we're looking at sort of the thumbnail and it should sort of bring so much excitement in. Okay, Marcus Rashford's going to sign a new deal. Whatever your thoughts in and around Mason Mount. We've got Mason Mount there, so okay, that's sort of progressing nicely, so that should draw some excitement. But Larry, those two things aren't overlined. While they are sort of moving in the right direction, we're seeing Manchester United, both the players, through no fault of their own, sort of stuck in limbo. Both Manchester United players and the players we want to name Manchester United players. Stuck in limbo. The Glazers stalling, nothing happening behind the scenes, or specifically nothing happening behind the scenes. And now we're seeing Arsenal signing Declan Rice. Now they've got a concrete interest in Lavia. Chelsea are sort of offloading all their players in terms of balancing the books for financial fair play. Everyone is sort of getting these deals done. Now, this is not to say United won't get the deals done, and we'll be having a very different discussion in 2 or 3 months' time. But as things stand now, we're getting far clearer evidence of history repeating itself in regards to what a manager gets at Manchester United when he qualifies for the Champions League. Now, yes, we can throw a different spanner in that in terms of, okay, when new owners come in, will things change? Of course, but it currently stands, the Glazers are still the owners. And this is, history repeating itself. And my question to you, in terms of, before I give you a chance to speak, is, are you coming around to my line of thinking in regards to, you disagreed with me, but I said the Glazers are going to be here well into the season. You said, no, this will get done. I think I'm leaning towards being right.
No, I still think it will get done. The Glazers are just naturally going to do what Glazers do, and that's try and milk every dollar out of Manchester United until the day that they inevitably leave. But look, I do maintain that we are reaching a conclusion. Granted, it's just slower than all of us would like. To be honest, though, my patience for this matter is probably more relevant and more present now than it has been previously, mainly because of the understanding, at least I now have, to say that it doesn't really impact United's ability in terms of the transfer market. Because ultimately, any changes that the new owners would make in terms of infrastructure, the women's team, youth setup, community engagement, etc., all of those will take time for United to reap the benefits of. Of course, sooner rather than later is obviously better. In saying that, the immediate priority will obviously turn to on the field with the men's team. But I've got to say, even with the women's team, 2 major players leaving, being allowed to leave, you have to say that that's been a mismanaged situation. And again, the negotiators from the men's team have had to become part of the females team. And we almost had a repeat situation of the Ander Herrera, where the Ander Herrera fiasco, where a competitive offer was made to our best women's player, too little, too late. At that point, she doesn't feel valued, and she's off to, it looks like, Arsenal. So,
well, it looks like she's actually sort of, an offer came in January for around 300,000 or 500,000 field was, let's say 300,000, which in the women's game is a huge transfer fee.
Absolutely.
Manchester United don't accept it. She walks out the door for free. And I'm just thinking, in terms of the management, look, and that's something we'll touch on, but maybe sort of when a few of the Manchester United women players do arrive in Australia for the Women's World Cup, maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper into that and sort of have a bit of an insight in regards to women. Sort of fingers crossed the ownership issue is sorted by then, and we can have maybe a clearer set of eyes on it. But just say good day to everyone in the live chat. Hope all is well. But Andrew, good to see you, mate. If we can get one sign in, happy days. Other clubs are buying like it's a winter sale, buy one get one free. We can't buy one player.
They're not really, mate. There's a lot of speculation, but in the Premier League, outside of Liverpool, no one's made an official signing yet.
Chelsea did sign this player about 2 years ago, it seems, but Chelsea about 20 minutes ago officially unveiled or officially announced that in Nkunku. But that was signed.
He was signed in January.
George, good to see you, and the other George as well. Hope all is well. Dion as well. It's an interesting
the
one
other
here.
George. How nice is that? The other George. He must feel really valued by this podcast.
Well, it depends who says it first. If George M says it first, George A will be the other George. So get your comments in nice and early, Georges. But here, massive shout out to Ronaldo. He'll become the first man to reach 200 international. I remember growing up, if someone ever got near 100 international caps, that was unheard of. Remember when Beckham was doing, you think, oh my God, he's going to hit 100 caps. And how football has changed in that 10, 15 years now that someone's going to reach 200 caps.
Not to knock Ronaldo in any way and not to dilute this phenomenal achievement, but they're playing more games for their country.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I mean, how the game has changed in regards to that was Yeah, maybe just all the wages, goals, etc. The way all those things happen. Antonio, good to see you, mate. Make sure if you do need a little bit of rugby league content, go over to the Gone for 10 show. Al here, which we'll touch on Mason Mount. I don't want Mason Mount. He's bang average. Hoyland is also overrated. And Dion in regards to Shambolic as usual. That is our life as Manchester United fans in regards to dealing with this ownership. But Larry, we'll start on Marcus Rashford. This is a big contract. Now, it's a catch-22 in regards to his. Someone need to tie down, of course. Maybe it was a different discussion a year ago, but since Eric Ten Hag has come in, Marcus Rashford was probably our player of the season. Depends how you look at it. He got our pubcast player of the year sort of thing. So this is a big contract. I'm not sure what the official sort of figure reported is. Let's say, I don't know, I'm guessing around 350, 375,000 a week. Now, Marcus Rashford is more than just a footballer for Manchester United in terms of how they value him. He's obviously this huge brand sort of on and off the field. So obviously his agent and Marcus Rashford are going to demand a sort of an appropriate wage for what he does bring Manchester United on and off the field. But it's a tricky one because I think he deserves to stay. I think he deserves a new contract. But then also you put him on this wage and you think, well, does anyone deserve that? Does one season? Now he's obviously, his sort of career is sort of on the right trajectory. But does this one season deserve that sort of wage increase? And he needs the contract, but if you don't offer him those wages, he's going to leave elsewhere. So you do have to give him that high sort of extortionate wage. Otherwise, he's going to leave and then we're all going to kick up a fuss. So just your thoughts on Marcus Rashford. I think it's a good thing. I don't want to sound negative around it, but I can see if the Glazers are in charge in 2 years' time, I guarantee you we'll all sit here in 2 years' time saying, why the hell did we give Marcus Rashford this contract? And I'm just... Yeah, well, it's a tricky one at the moment.
What was the reported wage offer?
I haven't clicked on any articles, just reading by Twitter. And again, that's not where I'm sort of should be getting my information, but I'm guessing it's around 350.
I think Erling Haaland's on 350 at City. Is Rashford as important to Manchester United as Haaland is to City? Guess that's a big question.
In terms of the money, in terms of the people making the business decisions, like we're looking at as a footballer on the field, to Manchester United as a business, maybe he's probably more important,
of course. To be honest. There's a commercial attraction with Rashford. He's obviously a massive PR victory as well for the club. And yeah, people don't like to hear these sorts of things, but that's the reality of it. He's MBE, he's English. There's a lot of attraction that comes with that. Look, 350 is a lot of money, but if he were to go to PSG, Mbappe's been linked with a move away. I think Rashford's a very like-for-like style of player. If Rashford went to PSG, I'm sure he'll earn that and then some. If he goes to another Premier League rival, I imagine it'd be very comparative. So I don't think United are paying anything beyond what other clubs would pay. With Rashford, I actually am more understanding of it. I think Rashford can walk into any team in world football at the moment based on his form or level of performance this season. I really do. Now, you could argue whether he makes the starting 11 for Real Madrid, Barcelona, but I absolutely believe those two clubs would take him. And the fact that they would take him says he'll make a phenomenal amount of money. So you have to say, if United are paying around that, fair play. I can't really dispute it too much.
How do you see it unfolding, though? Because as I say, look, we're going to, fingers crossed, we're going to have new owners to have a different discussion in 2 years' time when we're halfway through Marcus Rashford's contract. But when we hand out these contracts to whoever, to be Paul Pogba, David De Gea, back in the day when he was the best goalkeeper in the world, you're paying what he wants so he stays. Now Marcus Rashford's our best player, give him what he wants so he stays. In 2 years' time, when that wage is a little bit too much and that we're not performing as a team, nothing to do with the individual, but when we need scapegoats and everything, and we look at Marcus Rashford, who's not hitting 30 goals, which he has proven he's done. Fingers crossed he is doing that, but just the potential situation, we're going to sit back here and say, who on earth put him on that wage? And I just think it's the right thing to do now because we do need to keep him, but it's the tricky spot we do find it. So how do you see it unfolding on the pitch for Rashford the next 2-3 years?
I think you run that risk with every player to a certain extent. If, God forbid, I want to make it clear, I'll never wish injury on a player. If Erling Haaland did his ACL tomorrow, if Kevin De Bruyne does his leg, like all of these are hypotheticals and unknowns, and these are the risks you take with player contracts. However, with Rashford, I think this isn't an ability thing with him. I think we've seen him, he's produced 20-plus goals for 3 seasons out of the last 4. So I think it's fair to say, all in all, he's produced on a consistent level. His performances haven't been consistent, but 3 out of the last 4 seasons, he has scored 20 or more goals. So I think that it's absolutely valid to say he's earned this contract. Where you would be more critical of this is the likes of Phil Jones getting a new contract when he's barely played any football. Good to see that United are learning from previous mistakes, not renewing contracts to players with severe injury records or injury-prone players. I think it's a fair deal. In terms of how do we see Rashford going, I'd like to see him improve on what he did this season. I still think, based on his level of performance, we saw such an elite player with a purple patch all post-World Cup. If he can start next season the way he got to the level of performance he produced from January onward, we got a 30-goal-plus player potentially on our hands. I think if he scores 25, I think 25 goals has to be the bare minimum. He should score 25 goals or more next season. Anything below that, I think then he would have underperformed what he's done this season.
I want to bring these 2 comments up here. This is obviously a different discussion, but it sort of ties into it. Sancho's on 350, which you do like watch his performances, and now his time is unveiled at Old Trafford. It is crazy how that has sort of eventuated. One here from George in regards to okay, we put Marcus Rashford on that contract. The impact here, we're talking about Rashford's performance, and does he warrant it? How does he sort of his motivation levels when a player gets put on this? We're talking about Mason Mount. Do you not want to go to 60 million because that's going to eat away at a transfer budget? In regards to not just a wage budget, but also to see if a better player than Rashford comes in. I was reading that comment. Thanks, Larry. Where to go? If a better player than Rashford comes in and through the door, let's say Harry Kane, does the Marcus Rashford wage tell you a story from what the club is thinking in regards to his importance to the team, that he's going to be the striker? You're not going to bring in another striker and put him on 350 grand a week?
No, not necessarily. We have to remember when you sign a player, it's not purely the on the pitch player. It's everything. It's the brand. With all due respect to Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford is a more world-renowned name than Harry Kane is. That's just the facts of the matter. If I walk in the street and I talk to a fan, or even someone who's not a football fan, they are more likely to know who Marcus Rashford is than they are to know who Harry Kane is. And that comes back to the value of Marcus Rashford. I have to also remember, Rashford's younger. He's got his better years ahead of him. I think we've seen the best of Harry Kane. Now, for Harry Kane, it's about maintaining his level of performance.
Do you think in England, though, the status of the England captain, to maybe social media and the younger generation, Rashford is that name, but in regards to, I don't want to say like business opportunities sort of thing, but in regards to status within the game, the England captain, and I know the trophies have eluded him in regards to Harry Kane's career, but I know that this is an extreme example sort of thing in terms of we're talking sort of the most famous footballers on earth. But Harry Kane is in that ballpark of Marcus Rashford popularity.
Oh, of course. He is. He definitely is. But I think if you're looking to sell shirts, I think you sell more Rashford shirts than you sell Harry Kane shirts globally. It's just a fact. Like the style of player that Rashford is more attractive to your average teenager who's watching football. Harry Kane is not someone who will be appreciated by a 13-year-old female flirting with the idea of football. It's watching someone dribble past someone, speed. Rashford passed the eye test more than Harry Kane does. And you're right. For the teenager, Rashford's more attractive. But guess who's buying jerseys majority of the time? It's the teenager, or it's the little kid begging mum and dad for a shirt. They're asking for Rashford 10 on the back. They're not asking for Harry Kane. So all of those things considered, Rashford is more valuable. Harry Kane, now on the pitch, of course Harry Kane offers more. I mean, he's got a phenomenal passing ability. His back to goal is brilliant, technically sound. He can score goals in every variety of way that you'd want out of a striker. Harry Kane's brilliant. But would Harry Kane demand as much money as Marcus Rashford? I mean, he might request it. I could make a case to say Rashford deserves more based on the things that I've just said.
Yeah, well, that's what his team and his sort of lawyers and his agents sort of are walking into the offices in London at Manchester United. They are presenting all these facts.
let me make this one point on the Rashford and Kane debate in terms of who deserves more wages. Who would you say is a bigger big game player, Rashford or Harry Kane? As good as Harry Kane is, big game player.
It's hard. I've seen both. I've seen both do it, and I've seen both not do it. I think it's hard. I think if you terms of to weigh it up and visualize moments, you say Marcus Rashford. I do think in terms, especially for Manchester United, but in terms of Harry Kane, does he really have those? When did Tottenham have a big game? Well, I know they always have big games to them, but they're never in a. Okay, they had a Champions League final, which is a unique situation, and obviously in and around the England situation. But
it's not to pin it all on Harry Kane, but he's had a chance at a league title. He's had a chance at what's that? Carabao Cup. He's had a chance at a Champions League final. He's had a chance for England in finals. He's fallen short on the biggest stage. That's not to say I think he's incapable of performing at the biggest stage. I think he is. And perhaps he is suffering from Tottenhamism. But at the end of the day, the evidence doesn't fail. If I were to compare Harry Kane to Eric Cantona, who came to Manchester United and visibly lifted the level so that the team became Premier League winners, Cantona proved himself to be a winner. Granted, Cantona didn't do that with Leeds, so maybe there's a comparison there. Maybe Kane comes to Manchester.
No, Cantona led them to the title the season before he came to England. But I do take your point in regards to that. And where do you currently sit on it? Because at the moment, I was spoken to Josh as well yesterday about it. If you hadn't subscribed in your podcast app, a new podcast is out. Me and Josh had a chat at the pub. Click on the link in the description below. It's on all your podcast apps, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, etc. Link is in the description. I was chatting to him. United have sort of distanced themselves from Harry Kane. I still think he's the number one target. Whether it eventuates, whether we do get him, I still think United will go in hard for him. And I do think I understand all the risks and the hesitations spending that money on Harry Kane. I'll fully accept them, and many of them are valid.
What are the risks?
100 million on that age profile.
In terms 29, of nearly 30. For his style of striker,
for 1 year left on his contract, he could go for free next year. And I'm just thinking,
yeah.
I've got to say, I want Harry Kane. I'll go and do it. I'll go. Yeah, even Josh mentioned go get 120 million.
I wouldn't care.
Yeah,
but the style of striker. Sorry to cut you off, Tom. The style of striker that Harry Kane is. Do you have any concerns about his longevity? Because I don't. Yeah. He could comfortably play to this level for the next 4 to 5 years.
Definitely. I think as a player, he's criminally underrated. And he's one of the most appreciated players in the world. But in terms of he's not just that out-and-out goal scorer. He's kind of like I would say, would you say, maybe a little bit less dribbling and maybe not as explosive, but almost more sort of cultured Anthony Martial in regards to he gets on the ball, touch, he drops it a little bit. He sort of likes to turn and face the defenders, can link up play, but then obviously has extreme finishing as well. But he obviously done that burst.
Yeah, but that's the thing. He's never relied on pace. Yeah. So that's why I take great confidence in buying a player of his age. Given that he's also done it in the Premier League, he'll perform to this level for the next 4 or 5 years, assuming obviously injuries are on his side and he's well managed as he enters his 30s. But Matt's saying here Kane as a number 10. I mean, nah, mate. Like I get that. I get that idea. But just because someone can drop deep, it doesn't mean that they're a 10. The way a player plays in that position is different.
Well, before we get on, I want to move on to a number 10 who currently plays his football in London, who could go to Man United. You mentioned earlier in regards to what you expect from Marcus Rashford. So everyone in the live chat, answer this question before we move on, just as I go through some comments. Larry says he expects 25 goals from Marcus Rashford next season. For me, and again, maybe this changes. Is we seen Rashford the left winger,
at least 25.
Are we seeing a striker, or are we seeing a left winger? That'll obviously sort of change our view. Larry's saying 25. I think 20 goals. I think, and again, where they come from, what games they come in. If he scores 6 hat-tricks,
don't we have to demand more of him, Tom? Like
20 goals is a good season.
20 goals is a good season, but 20 goals was the player that I saw when he was 22. And I think the evolution of his game as a whole, I think he needs to be pushing himself for more. If you're going to demand that kind of salary, you need to score more goals. If I think of players who have played his position over the last few years, who we've put in that world-class bracket, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, and then even like the likes of, I know it's a little bit going back maybe 8 or so years now, but Ronaldo at his peak. No, I know Rashford's not Ronaldo levels, but you look at the players that Frank Ribery, Ian Robin, you look at the numbers that these sorts of players were putting up in their prime. Rashford needs to be pushing beyond 20 goals a season. Let's also not forget, he doesn't play exclusively as a left winger. There will be times where he plays centrally throughout the season, and he's been given a free role by Ten Hag for that reason. So with all those things considered, his aerial abilities improved. He was respectfully, he wasn't very good in the air. 3 seasons ago when he was scoring 20 goals a season. Because he's got more to his repertoire now, I expect 25 plus. I think that has to be the level for him.
Yeah. No, look, it's an interesting one. And look, here we are in the middle of June. We're going to have this debate for another 2 months probably. I think if Harry Kane arrives, it's not going to arrive until deadline day. But just 1 or 2 comments before we do sort of move on to the Mason Mount discussion. But Larry, you have annoyed Matt, who's left the chat. Yeah, he didn't actually. I'll defend Matt. He didn't say play him as 10. He did say he started his career at Tottenham as a number 10. But unfortunately, Matt has got. Hopefully, you're there with us, Matt. Hopefully, it is hard at times. I do the same thing. It's hard to read some of the comments and interpret, and yeah. So hopefully,
no
you're
hard
okay,
feelings,
Matt.
mate. It's just
yeah. But Alice saying, yeah, man, I don't have the money for Kane. We are broke. I share that sentiment, then also I say, well, no, that's not the case. It's hard in terms of our frustrations. It's maybe sometimes sort of get in the way of the facts, but we don't have the facts. Obviously, the Manchester United's financial people are aware of that. But SJ, good to see, mate. United's club need to share the goal scoring load. I hope Rashford doesn't have to score another 30. That's where I'm looking. I'm thinking, okay, Marcus Rashford's on the left wing. You bring in a Harry Kane, and that's where I think 20 goals off the left for Marcus Rashford is good because Harry Kane will have 35 to his name through the middle. And I think that's where I'm looking at a good season for Marcus Rashford. But if we don't bring in a striker, and Rashford is that number 9, yeah, probably in terms of what a successful season looks like, probably goes along your line of thinking. He probably needs 30 goals, minimum 30. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Dion here saying 20 to 25 would be great. That's my line of thinking at the moment. But fingers crossed, as a few have alluded to, he gets that help in and around the front three, and that only gets fixed in the transfer market because I don't think Jadon Sancho, Anthony Martial, Weghorst, Anthony, they're not players who are going to... They might have good seasons. They're not going to have seasons where they score 25 goals. They might...
Well, if you think back to Ollie's first full season in charge, so that's where I perhaps make the exception. So if we get a situation where... So from memory, please correct any of these numbers if you know off the top of your head, Tom. Martial scored 22.
You know, I'm shocking with numbers for goals. They're the only one I know is Ronaldo's.
Rashford scored 21 and Mason scored 17. If memory serves correct. Now, if you're getting those kinds of numbers from your front three, and I dare say Harry Kane gets more than Martial does, respectfully, then that would be brilliant. Let's also not forget Anthony needs to score more goals next season. I thought Anthony had definitely more than a pass mark. But Anthony needs to chip in with more goals. And I think there is a scenario where Rashford will score less because it's easier to mark him out of the game. He seems to be our only threat at the moment, goal threat at least. But if you start getting the likes of Anthony scoring more goals, Sancho scoring more goals, and a central number 9 that can chip in, then that will free Rashford up to potentially score even more because then you can only man mark or put 2 defenders on 1 player for so long because you'll get killed by the other players. But United, they've become so reliant on Rashford. And I think ultimately that's what killed us in the FA Cup final. There wasn't a whole lot of threat outside of Rashford and then obviously Garnacho. So if the other players around Rashford step up, then there's no reason why he can't have an absolutely blistering season.
Yeah, no, look, I agree, and that's a sentiment I've shared many times in terms of our draws and losses this season, or say last season, have been, I think, what could we have changed? And we could have changed a different approach. Everything was, okay, can we get Rashford in behind? Can we get Rashford in behind their right back? And if we did, we win. And if we didn't, if he was marked out of the game or they were sort of cutting the supply from Bruno or Eriksen out towards Marcus Rashford, that was sort of really stunting our play. So you are right in regards to hopefully it can be shared around and defenders can take their focus off Marcus Rashford, but I mentioned that name in there in regards to Christian Eriksen, who apparently played quite well for Denmark, which was good to see during the international break, but also
got a good gash on the eye.
Yes, I know in training. It looked like I think that was before that must happen at training or something, which that definitely happens. But yeah, actually, I forgot obviously got the relationship Christian Eriksen and Harry Kane for them Tottenham days. It's maybe a bit of a selling point.
Eriksen's an interesting one. Not a sexy name, I suppose, for United. But if we can get into a position where he plays a bit more advanced, I think he could. I understand why Ten Hag played him deeper, but wouldn't you like to see Eriksen further forward? He's such a dangerous player.
Well, I think when he did sign it, that's just what our minds went to. Okay, he's going to be a number 10.
Yeah. I'd like to see if they're going to do what they did again. I mean, obviously, you hold out hope United make some reinforcements in midfield. But if I was choosing between Eriksen and Bruno's the one I'd look to play a bit deeper. I think he's a more naturally suited to that position than Eriksen is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how Bruno's game does evolve next couple of years, how he matures. You look at Paul Scholes when he started his career, you would never think he sort of finished in terms of being one of the best number 6s to ever play. Like who knows what happens with Bruno.
I've discussed this with you before, but I'm keen to see if your opinion's changed. Given we've seen Bruno now deployed a little bit deeper at times, could you see Bruno dropping deeper as he goes further into his career? And do you think that he might be able to add longevity to his career at Manchester United? Do you see him?
It could potentially happen long term. I definitely see in regards to what he's shown he can do there. I think if he evolves that part of his game, I do see where that choice, maybe through physicality and his age, when that sort of goes away, he could sort of take up that path. As things stand in the short term, I don't see it. I just think he's too goal orientated in terms of on the front foot, trying to get forward in terms of his pressing. I just think let him be. That's his strength. Yes, he can do this, of course, but a lot of players have a few different sort of arrows to their bow. So long term potentially, but in the short term, in terms of that's where our immediate focus is. So I definitely think it's further forward in regards to Bruno's positioning. But someone in that area of the pitch, Mason Mount, get everyone's in the comments, get your thoughts in on Mason Mount, because my God, Larry, it divides opinion. And I think the play, if everyone sort of watches the play and what he brings, I think no one would have now there are sort of stereotypes in regards to you hear the name and how the season has gone at Chelsea. You think, no, he's no good. The quality of the play is a brilliant footballer. So I think everyone has taken emotion out of it, would welcome the player. Now, is he a starter? Is he a backup? That's up for debate, up for interpretation, or your personal preference. Erik ten Hag is the one making that decision. The sticking point, which makes this such a sort of heated debate, is the price tag, because Manchester United have put a bid in, so there is concrete interest. There's definitely interest. United are going to continue to go for him. But Chelsea want a lot of money. Now, if he was going to Saudi Arabia, they'd sell him tomorrow for 20 million. Manchester United in town, they want 60, 70 million. So I'm just thinking the sticking point still is this transfer fee. Manchester United look like the next bid's going to go in just over north of £50 million. Just me being a pessimist, Chelsea aren't going to accept that. They should. They won't. Manchester United will have to go higher. So I'm just your latest on the Mason Mount saga.
I think it'll happen. I think a compromise will be found. United have taken a good approach. Negotiation 101. You start with your lowest possible price with full knowledge that it will get declined. Chelsea are starting at their highest point, which was 80 million. They'll land in the middle. I have no doubt. It's the way negotiations go. If United come in and say, yep, we'll pay 80 million, Chelsea are laughing, and then we'll all be sitting here criticizing the owners and John Murtaugh and so forth. If Chelsea accepted 40 million for him, equally, if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be pretty insulted by that. I would want him to go for more. So I think the sweet spot is probably 55 to 60 million.
But it looks like he has a year left on his contract, and I'm not sure what Manchester City will eventually pay for Kovacic, but they're going in for Kovacic, and it looks like 35 million. Now, will that be extended? Will that be increased? Probably at some stage, you would think. But in regards to, if I think at the start of the window, we said, who do you want, Kovacic or Mason Mount to arrive at Old Trafford? I think a lot of us would say Kovacic. So he should be the better player. He should demand more, especially Mason Mount with 1 year left on it. I'm not saying I share that opinion, but I'm just guessing on the whole. But Manchester United come to town, and suddenly the lesser valued player is valued at double the price.
It's boring to say, but there's something about a player being English. And I think United have lost they're going to lose a number of English players this summer. We've already seen 2 walk out the door in Phil Jones and Axel Tuanzebe. So United not only will want players, they'll want English players. So for that reason, English players are just more expensive. You make a very interesting point about the type of midfielder United go for. I think Mason Mount is perfect if United and if Ten Hag's vision is we're going to keep the ball. I'm relying on us to keep the ball. And actually what my plan is to get United further up the pitch. And by that, box other teams into their half. If that's the plan, then Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes as your rates is brilliant. If we're going to play the same way we did at times this season, and that's the plan, then yeah, I'm a little bit worried. I think Mason Mount is a more robust version of Eriksen.
Well, that's what I think. I think when you think of Eriksen, when you think of Mason Mount, you're drawing up your midfield in regards to playing football and going to score goals. My thinking around a lot of the Mason Mount, sort of including him by Erik Ten Hag's thinking, is a defensive thing, just in regards to if you draw up our midfield. Casemiro plays, of course he does. Bruno Fernandes plays, of course he does. Okay, Christian Eriksen, does this game suit him? Does it not suit him? Suddenly, how can you improve on Christian Eriksen? Okay, Fred's completely different. McTominay's completely different. You want Eriksen, but it doesn't really suit him. Okay, it's too physical, or he doesn't have the lungs to go 90 minutes sort of thing. How can you improve Christian Eriksen? You can't do it with Fred. You can't do it with McTominay because they're different jobs. Mason Mount, you would argue, age profile in terms of his attributes and everything, I think ultimately in terms of if you were to weigh up a career, you'd say, okay, Christian Eriksen's better than Mason Mount. But in regards to the modern game and the trajectory, there is a case that Mason Mount is a better Christian Eriksen.
I think Mason Mount can do what Eriksen can do with the ball, but has the physical attributes to cover the defensive side of the game. And for that reason, I agree with you. And I'm telling you, for his age profile, I dare say we can look back in 5 years and be like, what a signing this was.
There's always a player like that. An English player goes to another club. Absolutely. They either flop horribly or they kick on. You think, oh, geez, why did that club get rid of them? But you never know until 5 years later. He's got another level, Mason Mount.
For a midfielder, his best years are ahead of him. They're not behind him. He's 25. Is he 24? He's 25 at most. His best years are ahead of him. He would be a great signing for United. I could see how he fits in, and I could.
Are we a little bit desperate? Because I agree. I share those feelings.
Yeah.
Would we be saying that before a ball was good, or if we won the FA Cup final or lost the FA Cup final, his name was never mentioned, and we had our eyes on Frankie de Jong or Caicedo or Declan Rice? Would we be saying? Oh, I'm not saying you definitely wouldn't be, but would Mason Mount be a great signing then? I just think, are we in a situation now as fans? We're desperate. We're seeing all these clubs doing all this movement, and we're sort of, okay, he's linked with us. Let's YouTube scout him. Let's sort of claw the positives from this player. I'm not saying he's not a brilliant signing, but I'm just thinking, are we a little bit desperate as fans in terms of clutching on anything we can?
Well, that's on the assumption that Mason Mount's the only midfield signing we make. I think it's a home run that United sign Adrian Rabiot.
I like him. A lot of people don't.
And if you sign Rabiot, then you've now got a tool for the different types of opposition you can come up against. If you're versing Manchester City and you can play Casemiro and Rabiot as your sitting sixers, brilliant. Perfect, even. I think that's a perfect prototype to counter Manchester City. Mason Mount doesn't address that issue, at least not yet. Maybe over time, but he's not that kind of player yet. So, and that's a free transfer. And I think United will need to do smart business this summer. We know that there are constraints in terms of financial fair play, but if United can sign one or two free agents, like we did with Christian Eriksen, then who's to say United can't build a very strong and capable squad, one that was a major improvement on last season. Even if United are spending 150, sell a few players and manage to get one or two free agents, we can absolutely make those improvements in midfield.
Yeah, definitely. We'll play touch on Rabiot at some stage during this week. I assume if a deal is going to get done in terms of who's going to be first over the line, would a free transfer at the start of July, on July 1st, potentially be the first arrival at Old Trafford? If you're a betting man, you'd probably have to say yes. So we'll definitely touch on Rabiot in the coming days and weeks, because I think you just said he's a good sign. I really like him. I was in a small minority last season who wanted him. But he does divide opinion, so it'll be good to get everyone's thoughts when we discuss Adrian Rabiot in a little bit more detail. But just a few comments here. Al saying Caicedo. It does seem like Chelsea, potentially Arsenal, are interested in there. United just don't seem to be in the race, but a lot of people definitely would welcome him, but the name just isn't linked, unfortunately. Declan Rice for George. It does look like Arsenal, maybe 20 minutes before we did go live on our Sky Sports reporting that Arsenal's gone back in, a little bit north of £90 million. Do you assume Declan Rice is wearing the red and white of Arsenal?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately. I got to say, Arsenal moving very fast with what they want. Kai Havertz is the interesting one. I can't quite see.
I've always liked it. There's so much backlash. Yeah, I think he's a very good player.
But where does he...
Yeah, he's not a striker. Like a lot of people look at his goals. He's only scored this amount of goals because that's where we see him play for Chelsea.
Yeah.
He's only playing there because they don't have a striker. Their striker's playing in Italy.
But even as a midfielder, where does he play for Arsenal? Like, what position does he occupy? If you sign Declan Rice...
Obviously, Granit Xhaka has left. Well, I think Granit Xhaka has left. I'm not sure if that's confirmed or just sort of report. But yeah, look, ultimately they've got more games now. It's not just the Arsenal we've seen this season. They now have European football, so they do need to add to their squad, of course.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they went in. No, they did play in the Europa League this season.
Oh, they did too. But in terms of, we've never seen them as sometimes they can play a reserve team. They've never had that. They've always had a good 11, or we've sort of questioned how good their 11 is, but they've had their starting 11. Then after that, the drop off is amazing.
Yeah,
they go to
very, very interesting with Arsenal. I like Kai Havertz as a player, absolutely. It's the João Felix debate. João Felix, brilliant player.
Yeah, Antonio here, just that person off the striker. I think maybe can play a little bit deeper in midfield. I'd like to see.
Are they going to forfeit a player in midfield? Because the way they play, I can't see them pulling a midfielder.
They didn't have Odegaard. I think you'd maybe that's lazy in terms of the left-footed nature of the player. But I'd see him as an Odegaard sort of type replacement. But if the Chelsea is
Odegaard won't leave. No way. They'd be criminal to let him go. He's their best player for me.
Oh yeah, no, I think he's their best player last season. Yeah.
You take him out of Arsenal, they don't finish anywhere near where they finished this season.
Definitely. So just on Rabiot and Mount, if you're a betting man, are both going to arrive at Old Trafford? And if so, which one is more likely to be first? Because as I said, if Rabiot is going to be a free transfer, I think that is, if Manchester United want it done and Rabiot wants it done, that's done July 1st, the second his contract runs out at Juventus. So I think that's something that's probably behind the scenes already technically agreed now. And they're just waiting for the legalities to announce it. So I think I would be, if Rabiot is the move that Manchester United and player want, that deal is Manchester United's first arrival of this window. But in terms of the momentum we're hearing and the sounds in regards to reporting, it does look like Mason Mount is, I'd say, the priority or lead in the race.
Yeah, I think Mason Mount's definitely more likely. I think Mason Mount is close to a sure thing as you're going to get. The fact that we started hearing this before the season had even ended told me that, Erik ten Hag really wants him. So if you were asking me out of 10,
your thoughts here, Dion, just saying uninspiring. Just even the tone of your voice there. Talking
I mean, at least
even
just, of course.
But even just the tone of your voice, I think it's okay. If it has to be, and I do welcome Mason Mount. I think he'd be a good signing. But even I'm saying, okay, if it has to be Mason Mount, I can accept that. I can see the positives in that. But you look at the discussions we should be having in terms of teams trying to win trebles, winning Champions League, winning Premier Leagues. They're shooting for the stars. Now, I'm not saying Mason Mount's not sort of shooting to that level, but in terms of the perception, like Real Madrid aren't going after Mason Mount.
Let me ask you a question to kind of counter the point that you're making and the point that Dion's making as well, to be fair. I think we would all agree Frankie de Jong would be perfect for United's midfield, correct? All right. Let's assume Frankie de Jong doesn't want to come to Manchester United. Who's next? Give me one name.
I'm not saying now that these are very sort of popular names and a lot of people, I'm not saying I wouldn't welcome, I definitely would. The two big names are Caicedo and Declan Rice, but they're just not linked to Manchester United.
Caicedo, I like him as a player. Does he address the problem that United have, though? I'm not. That's he's combat. I'm not sure he's the. I don't think he's the player to get the ball off the back four and dictate play. That's not his game just yet.
If we didn't have Casemiro, you'd be breaking the bank. But with Casemiro there, I don't see. You'd welcome Caicedo, of course, in terms of.
Exactly.
Is it going to be the expensive £100 million Harry Kane? I wouldn't do it then.
Exactly. So all right. So that rules out Caicedo. The other one you said is Declan Rice. I actually dare say most United fans would say Declan Rice isn't worth anything close to £100 million. He's only demanding that fee because again, what his passport says. So with all of these things being said, outside of Frankie de Jong, there's no obvious player who walks into United, demands that position, and fulfills the role that we expect them to do. The one that I almost would be tempted, now I really don't think they'd be tempted to sell him. If United want to test Real Madrid for Tchouaméni, given that he's barely played football this season, that's the one I'd be going for. Between him or Camavinga. Camavinga at time, he played a lot of left back last season, actually. For whatever reason, I found myself watching a chunk of Real Madrid games in the Champions League. But
Yeah, he did play left back, yeah.
He played a lot of left back, and Tchouaméni barely featured at all. So unless there's a plan to really integrate him into the first team squad this coming season, if I was United, now that's a player I'd break the bank for. And I would really want to test Real Madrid's temptation.
The one for me, and a lot of people know the name that's kind of coming out of my mouth now because I haven't sort of shut up about it over the past year, but probably why I like sort of Adrian Rabiot in regards to the style of the player and sort of the body shape and everything, but very similar in terms of the way they play the game. I still like Jacob Ramsey. I still like him from Aston Villa.
I like Jacob Ramsey too.
But again, I'm not breaking the bank for him. I'm not saying he fixes our issues, but in just regards to a profile of signing, I think he's very good. But Manchester United go to Aston Villa now. Jacob Ramsey, you'd have to say, I would be paying 40 million, 50 million. He'd be going for 80, 90 million. I think if Manchester United came to town.
If you go around the Premier League, I think there are some astute signings that United could make. James Ward-Prowse, like he's not the level, but if he became a squad player, I think he's an upgrade on Fred and McTominay. I absolutely think he's an upgrade, at least with the ball. You don't agree with that?
Potentially. It's hard in regards to evaluate. It's so hard with James Ward-Prowse just because with you hear his name, you think free kicks. So that's where you're sort of.
No, he's a good player.
Yeah, I know he definitely is, but that's where your mind is drawn. So you don't really look at the strengths and weaknesses of his overall game. You just that everything is clouded by his set piece taking.
Southampton won 50 million plus. See, that would be.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. Yeah,
that would be absurd for you know why they're saying that. So I don't know how long this has been in place, but when you go down to the Championship, you get parachute payments for 2 seasons. So that's probably
been the case for
Yeah, so with that, maybe that's why they're thinking, actually, we don't need to sell him quick smart. We'll just hold on to him. But then there's the wages issue.
Here's one, Antonio, Manchester United fan, James Maddison. Does look like Newcastle definitely interested. The latest report, and it's a very lazy report. I think it's easy. Some of the newspapers can put this story out. It's an easy go-to. He wants to play in London. Now, that might be the case.
Different areas of the pitch, though, I think.
But James Maddison, but just in regards to, look, he's a Manchester, even look, far more advanced, far more attacking than Mason Mount, Christian Eriksen sort of thing. Like, he's in off the striker. But
good player. I'd take him.
Just in regards to, again, I'm not sure what the fees, and Newcastle are very hotly linked to him. Obviously, the furthest thing from playing football in London. But James Maddison, just in regards to that, looking for a bargain, okay, a relegated player, who can you go get? Tielemans has obviously left. That was a free transfer. I wouldn't say no to James Maddison if, again, it's almost that signing you don't want to be in this position. You don't want to be a lot of football there. You don't want to be glorifying this position. I'll take him on deadline day if we need him. I don't want to be in deadline day needing a player, but that's when I'll take James Maddison.
I can't see him sitting on the bench for United, and that's fundamentally why I wouldn't entertain it. Nothing to do with his ability. Ability-wise, I think he's got it. He's had a good season. I actually think he's probably been Leicester's best player this season. I think that's fair to say.
Him and his family's got a season ticket at Old Trafford.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. He goes quite often, actually. But so I like little things like that. Now, is that why we should sign a player? Of course not. We'll be signing 76,000 people.
Like, genuinely a good player. But the problem for him is I was going to say our best midfielder, but I guess that's debatable depending on what you value in a midfielder. Our captain plays in the position that James Maddison wants to play in. And for that reason, he won't play a lot of football. Bruno plays lots of football, as we saw this season. Would James Maddison, at the peak of his career, want to be sitting on the bench for Manchester?
Eric Ten, look, I agree 100% right. Does Eric Ten Hag, and this is maybe a wider discussion to have at a later date, but Eric Ten Hag change his approach this season? Now, obviously off the back of a good window, let's say he gets his ideal window, mainly just down to sort of the number of incoming signings, but does he change his approach next season in regards to that full strength / rotation in certain games, or he just gone 100% out every game he can?
I think
I think there'll
rotate
be a
more.
slight change. I think there'll be more rotation next season.
Absolutely. I agree with you. But if you're James Maddison, 27, 28 years of age, I don't think you want to be part of United's rotation. I think you want to go into a team where you demand to be part of the starting 11. I don't think at his age you're looking to be a rotation player. It would be criminal for his career. But mate, if he values being a fan more, go for it. But like I prefer what Tom Heaton has done, where he's a United fan, but he realized for his career he wanted to go be a number one striker. And now that he's in the back end of his career, happy to be number two and get the best seat at Old Trafford to watch football matches. I think it would be a disjustice to James Maddison's ability in his career to sit on United's bench. So for that reason, just for the player, I would hope he doesn't do that. He's too good to just sit on the bench.
Yeah, no, it's a definite point. Andrew here, anyone by Paulinho from Fulham. It does look like, I think either West Ham or Tottenham, someone's come in with a pretty hefty bid. So I'm sure there's going to be movement there.
The most flamboyant thing about Paulinho is his name. He's not bad.
You could see him being Ruben Neves' replacement at Wolves, just in terms of Paulinho is just a name that goes to Wolves.
I can't wrap my head around Ruben Neves at 26 going to say,
it's stupid, but
but he'll get that money in 4 years' time. Like, there's no need. Like, he has so much more to achieve in the game. I get it. But these guys, like, to me, that this is like Oscar, and I'll never forgive Oscar for going to China when he did. Someone with the ability that Oscar had, and then he goes and wastes his career in China for money. Like, it's criminal because these guys are not getting paid $100,000 a year. They're making that a week. It's ridiculous amounts of money.
Someone making that a day when you break down their contract. And look, yes, but
it's ridiculous.
It's hard.
It's not hard. It's greedy. Sorry.
But until you're in that position, if you're in that position, Larry. Well, I agree. But if you're in that position, someone's going to quadruple your wages.
If I was in that position, my legacy as a player is much more important to me. You're going to be a multimillionaire no matter what. Like, how much money does a human really need? Like, these guys, by the time that they are 23, if you're a Premier League player, if you make your debut at 20, most of them making their debuts younger than that. If you play 3 years in the Premier League, you're set up for life, right? You're set up for life. You don't have to think twice about anything again. Ruben Neves has more than done that. He's got plenty of money. Now, unless he is going to solve world poverty with his contract, there is absolutely no justification for him going to Saudi Arabia and accepting the money that he's on. Sorry, I don't get it. I will always be critical of a player who chooses at the peak of his powers when he can go to you put Ruben Neves in United's midfield. We spoke about Frankie de Jong. Ruben Neves is a clear upgrade on anything.
Well, it's the positives I'm taking out of Ruben Neves leaving. It means on opening day of the season, we don't have Ruben Neves to curl in that free kick in the 88th minute to win it 1-0 for Wolves. I think that's my main positive I'm taking out of him leaving the country.
It's a shame for him as a player. And honestly, he should be ashamed. He won't be. He's clearly happy. He's going to get a fat pay packet, and good luck to him for that. But I think as a player, when you're given with God-given talent like he has, you've got to fulfill your legacy in the game. As much as
interesting debate. It's interesting. It's hard. I definitely see both sides. But me personally, I'm with Dion. I'll be taking the money, but I'll try and take the high ground. And you're right to take the high ground.
Imagine you in Saudi Arabia. You would stick out like a sore thumb.
Who's the player that went there? Not Kante. They're signing a few. Ruben Neves, Kante, Benzema.
Have they signed one Caucasian player?
No, but there's Saudi a weird Arabia. One. I don't want to say weird one in terms of a Caucasian player, but someone who didn't.
It's honest. It'll be funny because like it'll definitely fail the eye test.
But yeah, but it didn't fit. It was like when Thomas Gravison signed for Real Madrid in all those Galacticos, Beckham, Robinho.
Yeah. Well, who was the other guy who signed for Barcelona?
Braithwaite, the Denmark guy.
Braithwaite. Oh my goodness! Like that just didn't fit either.
Just to wrap up here, George, in terms of what we're talking, there's so many incomings and what they can do, but look at the outgoings here. George saying, any chat regarding Man United's free agent class 2023, Bayu, Tellez, etc. They're not free agents. They're definitely not. I did see, and this one's going to, I don't know whether it amuse you, Larry, or piss you off, but Eric Bayu's rumoured transfer fee, $2 million. Now, I'll be selling him at whatever the cost, but just if he was at Chelsea, he'd be going for 42 million. And I'm just thinking,
yeah, that's laughable. He's worth more than that. That's bullshit.
Is he? Like, what could Manchester
Yeah,
United
he
demand?
is.
Yeah, he is, but like, really, like, who's going to buy him for 22 million?
The problem with Eric Bailly is the guy's an absolute kamikaze.
He spent half of this season suspended.
I know he has to be up there with one of the most frustrating players I've ever seen don a Manchester United shirt, because ability-wise, no reason for him not to be world class. Honestly, like, he has everything. His ball distribution wasn't perfect, but in terms of one-on-one defending, there's not many better. He had the instincts for it. He got the pace, the physicality. No, you're right. He doesn't have it up there, and for that reason, his career is an absolute toilet. He also just no sense of self-preservation. Like, Vidic put his head in dangerous places, but you never had fears of Vidic getting injured. Eric Bailly does things that make you wonder, does he need a mental health assessment?
Do you see any, whether you throw Dean
I'm
Henderson?
I'm going to need you to hold the fort for about a minute. My laptop's about to die, so I need to get a charger. So hold the fort.
Please do in the chat then. Answer me this in regards to any of the players out on loan now. It does look like Dean Henderson is going to be sold, so maybe you can include Dean Henderson in this discussion if you do want. But any of those players out on loan, in terms of not just the youngsters, not the sort of the youth players out on loan like your Hannibal, maybe even Hannibal, maybe a bit older, but those players out on loan coming back to Manchester United and integrated into the first team. So the players there, I'm thinking Eric Bailly, is there a chance? I don't think there is a chance. Obviously, there's not. But Eric Bailly coming back in, having a career. Alex Tellez coming back, having a career. Who was the other one? Not Donny van der Beek. He wasn't out on loan. He had unfortunate injury. But Larry, I'll throw it to you. Is there any player that was out on loan for Manchester? Ahmad's probably in there as well, but it does look like potentially reported, maybe looking at another loan spell. Is there any player out on loan that you expect to come back and have a fair crack at the whip in terms of a Man United season?
There's one other player outside of Ahmad, maybe not an as well-known name, Alvaro Fernandez. I think he's a chance. Alvaro Fernandez, I think.
Look, I agree. I did remember doing a video about a year ago, but my questioning around Alvaro Fernandez here, so Antonio's gone Tellez as well, just at left back. I'm just thinking Shaw's going to play, and you have Malacia. So George is also saying Alvaro Fernandez. So I think that's a good way to start. He's had a successful spell at Preston North End and got that senior football under his belt. I just look at the left back situation, and is he going to get the games? And I would say probably not.
I think he'll get enough game time. In terms of,
could Luke Shaw be a centre back in terms of?
In terms of ability and like footballing ceilings, I think Alvaro. I think Fernandez has more to his game than Malacia. Absolutely, yeah. He's a better footballer than Malacia. If you've seen him play, technical ability, he's got it over Malacia in spades. Yeah. He's got a good delivery, great passing range.
Could Eric Ten Hag potentially, I wouldn't say be pulling the plug on Malacia, obviously have faith in him and watch him progress as a young player, and I'm definitely not saying get rid of Malacia, but could Eric Ten Hag potentially be looking at Malacia and think, well, okay, maybe not the player that I thought he was? I'm not saying that is the case, but could there be a potential situation like that?
I think Malacia will be the kind of player that United will sell for a profit. I think he'll improve. I think he's worth more than what United have paid for him already. But I think he'll be the rare United player that gets sold for a profit. I think that's Malacia's future, whether that's in a season or two time. But I think if you're United and if you're Eric Ten Hag, Fernandez needs an opportunity. He bossed it in the championship, and I mean bossed it. He played very well. I saw enough of him to make that statement. I don't just watch YouTube highlights on things. I saw enough of him. I caught some of the games he played in. He's physical. He's got the pace. The only question mark I would have, and which hopefully he gets the opportunity in preseason, he did play like a wing back position. So you'd want to see him in one-on-one defending. That's how you mark a good defender. But he has everything in terms of ability to... I'm going to stop short of saying surpass Luke Shaw. I think Luke Shaw is very clearly number one. But in terms of ability, Fernandez could be first choice left back within a couple seasons' time. I think he could push Luke Shaw. I really do believe that.
Okay, quick question to wrap up, Larry, and answer this in the chat as well.
Big
Two
body
players.
too. Something in that.
Sorry?
He's a big body.
Oh, yeah, he's big. Well, that's where in terms of you could almost see potential career in terms of maybe even he's very comfortable on the ball. Don't know what the modern game looks like in terms of moving inside to a left back role. But my final question to wrap up, Larry, give me two names, one incoming, one outgoing in terms of the first bits of business for Manchester United. Who's going to be our first sign in, but also who's the first official exit? And not in regards to those sort of free, or throw De Gea in there as well potentially in regards to the contract expiring, but De Gea / a sale, the first sale and the first incoming.
First sale and first incoming. First incoming is going to be someone uninspiring. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be a centre back. I don't know who. I'm going to guess that that'll be United's first signing. I'm having a mind blank. The Monaco guy, who I haven't seen a lot of.
DRC, I think.
DRC. I haven't seen a lot of him. I couldn't tell you if he's good or bad. But if I had to take a guess, I can see that deal getting done pretty quickly without a lot of trouble. So for that reason, I think that happens first. Outgoing, I'm going to say Harry Maguire. I think Harry Maguire will be first to go.
For me, the first outgoing will be De Gea. I think all parties will want to get that sorted ASAP. And it'll give
it stays, you know. I'm not sure.
Potentially, very likely. My gut at the moment today, tomorrow might say something different. Today says he will be offered, and I think all parties, both Saudi Arabia, De Gea, and Eric Ten Hag, will want to get that sorted because it'll clear up Eric Ten Hag's.
Saudi Arabia money makes complete sense.
Yeah, definitely different contexts around different players at their stages in their career, of course, in terms of achievements, etc. And the incoming for me, and I'm very lazy in regards to this. I always look at just the legalities of contract sort of times. I just look if a free transfer, a deal would be agreed now in terms of someone sort of moving to a new club. You just can't officially announce it while still currently contracted. I do think, again, I'll have a completely different opinion tomorrow. As of today, I do think Rabiot will join just for the sake that he's a free transfer. And that's not why we should be signing him, but the situation we do find ourselves in, I think that is. And was Christian Eriksen our first sign? No, Malassi would have been our first signing last season, but Christian Eriksen came in early July. Actually, that was even quite delayed for a free transfer, wasn't it? It wasn't the first. It took a while. We were down in Melbourne at the time.
A while. There was even talk of him staying at Brentford for a little bit, which I was like, I thought was hilarious.
Andrew here saying what the club will definitely pedal. Rashford's our first signing. I'll watch them do that July 1st.
I can see that announcement coming pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, they need whatever the news, they need some type of positivity. Is that selling a player, signing a player, new contract, a new kit? Not that the new kit would bring too much positivity, but they need something to sort of sway the tide because at the moment it's just doom and gloom around Old Trafford. When you see,
I'm not going to ask you. Don't answer this question. I'll leave it as a cliffhanger for our next episode. Is Marcus Rashford Manchester United's next number 7? Don't answer it. Just think about it. And we can talk about it in the next episode.
Interesting one. You know me. I love a shirt number debate. As long as our next number 11 doesn't start with the letter G, I'm happy. And that's not to say Garnacho shouldn't be sort of progressed and have a better number, but I do think we need to move forward and sort of change that number 11 strip in terms of play them in central midfield or something, or play them through the middle.
Retire that shirt. It's cursed. Everyone who plays in it.
Well, we think the 7 is the cursed shirt. No, it's moved on to 11, unfortunately. But look, do appreciate everyone joining the live chat. Plenty of different opinions, obviously. Especially the Mason Mount discussion is one that generates a lot of opinion. So good to see everyone keeping it nice and sensible and level-headed in the chat. Larry, always a pleasure. We should be meeting up at the pub tomorrow for a drink and a feed and obviously record a little bit of content from the pub. So if you are looking for that, please do.
What are you feeling? I was
actually there last night for the Man United Supporters Club. We had our Supporters Club AGM. I got the chicken schnitzel. It's actually decent.
I love Antonio. Oh, I swear to you, Tom, I don't like Jordan Pickford, but I would take great delight in just watching your face as he had.
Remember how our fan base pretty much stopped the Arnautovic deal last year in regards to digging up old charges? I think there'll be a backlash towards Pickford. I think we could find dirt on him, and I think we can start that on the podcast. So if you are hesitant on the Jordan Pickford deal, start scouring the internet and look for some dirt on Pickford so we can start spreading it to avoid Manchester United. Because he's going to cost as well.
Kind of guy who'd pick his nose and flick his booger at you.
Yeah, after he takes a bite himself. But cheers, Andrew.
What do you think would happen if Phil Jones and Jordan Pickford were locked in a room together?
You could see those two. You always see the England camps in terms of they always sort of certain players sort of stick together, like Declan Rice and Mason Mount, and like Marcus Rashford and Saka and Jadon Sancho. These little cliques here in terms of Jordan Pickford and Phil Jones. They're rumoured together. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Not that Phil Jones is anywhere near the England squad, but you know what I mean. If he was.
Yeah, I see that.
But I do appreciate Dion here. Is Origin tomorrow? I think today, tomorrow. Yeah, good luck, Blues. Who won the first match?
Queensland. The Blues were leading with 8 minutes to go. One man and Queensland had a player in the sin bin, but still New South Wales managed to concede a try. So not good. And it's at Suncorp, so I think the Blues got a big Mason mountain to climb.
I like what you did there, but a good one. But in regards to that, Larry and I will meet up as soon as we finish work tomorrow to record something from the pub, because I'm sure Larry will be rushing home to watch the State of Origin. But hopefully everyone did enjoy that. I'm sure you did. Please do leave a like on the video. Make sure you are subscribed so you are notified when our chat from the pub comes out this time tomorrow. And who knows? Stay tuned. Who knows? News could break around anything. The stock price, Qatar, Glazers, Sir Jim, Mason Mount, Rashford, De Gea. While there is no news, there's always sort of news always around the corner with United. That's the way it is. So enjoy, everyone. Larry, pleasure as always, and I'll chat to you tomorrow, mate.
Yep. Look forward to it, mate. Cheers.
See you, mate.